Hey, pleasure seekers. Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to share a really quick note. So, this conversation that you are about to watch is with someone named Christian, and it was a very thought provoking conversation. It was very layered. I got a lot from it. But there are a few perspectives that I don't fully align with based on my own beliefs and my own lived experience. But I didn't want to scrap this episode. We both put a lot of time into getting together to have the interview, and I also put a lot of time into just the back end of working on the edits and all of that. So instead of doing a dirty delete or editing out the parts that I didn't agree with, like some podcasts do, I decided to release it in two parts. So the part that you're about to listen to or watch now is the full interview. It's raw, it's unfiltered, outside of some duplicate information or me having to pause during the interview to take care of something. Those are the only things that have been edited out. The second part, though, is only available for the pleasure seekers in the paid community on Substack. And in that episode, I'll be sharing some personal reflections and takeaways from this conversation. I'll be talking about what landed and what didn't. And I'm also going to be talking about these topics through the lens of alignment, embodiment, and care. There were just a few things that I felt missed the mark as it related to some of the suggestions that Christian gave, which were great suggestions, but I don't feel like some of them take into account marginalized communities or differently abled individuals. So, with that being said, take what resonates, leave the rest, and let's get into it.
Welcome to the Power of Pleasure podcast. I'm your host, L'Oreal, and I'm on a mission to help you embrace pleasure as a lifestyle. This show is a love letter to all the pleasure life has to offer. And each week, I'll be chatting with friends, loved ones, peers, and people I admire about all things pleasure. Through these conversations, I'm giving you the best tools, resources, and tips to help you create a life that is ooey gooey juicy good, one shift at a time. So buckle up and let's get ready for this week's episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, beautiful people, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Power of Pleasure podcast. I'm your host, L'Oreal, and today we are joined with the amazing Christian Elliot. I'm really excited to have him on the show today because we're going to be talking about healing, detoxing, what the differences are, and a couple of tools and strategies that you can use to detoxify your life as well as your body. So please join me in a round of applause, welcoming Christian to the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for the round of applause. It's good to be here.
Good. I'm really happy that you decided to join me on the show today. And I've already given the viewers and the listeners a little bit about you, but I would really appreciate if you take a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about what it is that you do.
Sure. Well, I guess on the high level, I'm a husband and father of 6. So we have chosen to homeschool our kids. So there's a whole different lifestyle that goes with that. Been an entrepreneur for about 20 years now, officially, I guess. And so haven't looked back. I love that as a way to just it reaches the values that I have and the lifestyle I want to have. So it definitely has its trade-offs, as you probably know. That the entrepreneur route is you got to look in the mirror and own your success and your failures. And so, but personally or professionally, I guess I've been a health coach since 2005, and really that means I've come to look at the body very holistically. So I started in nutrition and then got into fitness and then life coaching, and it really. At one point we had brick and mortar locations. We had that for 9 years. And so our business was about integrating various holistic disciplines. So chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapists, naturopathy, fitness, nutrition, and several other adjunct modalities so it was fun for us to be able to say, what does it take to get a person well? And we realized it's not about one thing, and we can have the smartest, best team. And then there's this thing called human nature. There's this thing called motivation. There's this thing called a real life and a context that has to fit into. And we don't really tend to separate mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual anymore. It's one person. And so in 2017, we moved on from brick and mortar locations, and my wife and I just took the business virtual, which is much more conducive to family life and lets us have evenings and weekends back and not get up so early for clients. So that has been a nice shift. And it's just, we've really specialized of late in just the growing recognition that the source of the biggest bullseye, center of the target when it comes to why we are so sick today has to do with the fact that we're bleeding to death from 1,000 tiny cuts. We are literally poisoned from birth to grave. And unless we can address the toxicity problem and unburden the body from that, it's really hard to actually help it heal. And so our focus is, as you mentioned, is kind of twofold. It's how do we clean the body out, but how do we set up the habits and behaviors or the modalities that really help the body heal? And so that's where we find ourselves today, is doing that work in an online forum and teaching people just some of the most amazing, really spectacular ways that just blow people away how easily the body can heal when you get the basics down.
I love that. I love all of that, especially because it sounds like you and your wife have built a business that approaches this from a human perspective,
Yeah,
versus, the bodybuilding machine situation that we see a lot on social media. A
sure.
lot of people focusing on the body, and they're doing just the meal prepping, but I don't really see any of the mindset work. I don't really see any of the spiritual development that goes into that. Because getting healthy and detoxing your body, detoxing your life is about so much more than that. So have you always viewed it that way, or is it something that you kind of stumbled into?
Yeah, great question. And I affirm your perspective, because it really is different. And most everything in the health world is specialization. And while riches can be found in niches, health can't be. And because we have to approach health holistically in order to have it, we said, how do we make that a lifestyle? So we've kind of, I guess to your point, we've always been thinking that way. And it was really a divine appointment of a chiropractor who changed the paradigm of health I had. I up until that point, this was 2003, I had always just kind of done what most people do. Trust you get sick, you go to a doctor, and that's the system you plug into. And I didn't realize that the system wasn't looking out for me. I didn't know until years later that the system was set up by monopolists who want to get you into a system, into perpetuity, with checkups and medications you stay on, and they're never addressing health. And then the same thing applied to the food system. It's just a quagmire of partial truths and biochemical whack-a-mole and manipulation. And a lot of what we have today shouldn't even be called food. It's more like a food-like product. And that just the two lenses to see the health world from, and then getting into fitness, to your point, yes, it's all about macros, it's all about calories, it's all about cardio, and it's just bodybuilding and protein shakes. And no, it's not. And so much of what is in both of those worlds is actually the opposite of health. And so having that kind of awakening, 2003, and then working it out really till 2005, helped me say, if that chiropractor changed my life that dramatically, why in the world isn't that normal? And how many other disciplines and ways of seeing the world have I been clueless about, that when I see it, I can't unsee it, and it permanently changes the way I think and see the world. And so that really awakening helped me look at health more broadly and be open to other disciplines that I just wanted to learn about. And some have more merit than others, I'll say. But yes, there's a paradigm of health that's just different. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it makes, okay, there's a little bit more going on than just get my macros at a particular level. How many grams of fiber I'm supposed to have, or what time to go to bed. There's so many different rules. But the rules and the ideas often aren't based in sound principles. And once you get the principles down, the tactics get so much easier because you know why you're doing what you're doing. So we've just really enjoyed over the years. The two things we can count on that don't change are human nature and human physiology. Human nature isn't, we're all long for the same things. And human physiology isn't changing. It's not like you have 3 livers and I'm the only person in the world who doesn't need to drink water. Like there's the same laws of physics we're all bound by. And once that clicks, That's like, you just need to find your way into the wellness world, and it gets, there's a lot to know, but once you sort through it and you find the principles, so much is easier about detox and healing.
That was a lot, but I kept up with everything that you were saying. There are a lot of things that are not healthy. There are a lot of things that have been normalized that really shouldn't be, but I don't feel like there are enough people speaking on the things that we accept and normalize, whereas we should likely be rejecting them, but looking for a different way.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to, I guess, the health space that we've been shown, I know a lot of us who are dealing with autoimmune issues or, some sort of illness that we have to consistently go to the doctor for. We're constantly having to take these medications. A lot of people are now, especially with everything going on astrologically, a lot of the energy shifts and people waking up, so to speak, and seeing that something is wrong. Something is fundamentally wrong. The rose-colored glasses are coming off and people are looking around and going, this is not right. I need to do something about this. I don't really know where to start. The information that I'm finding sounds really scary, really restrictive. I don't know what to do. And I'm sure that you've worked with clients who have been in that space, and they're really just trying to get started, but they are scared to death of having to give up the life that they've currently created and everything that they know and everything that makes them comfortable. And so what are some things that you do to help them focus on the goals? Whereas I want to stop taking this medication because it makes me bloated, it makes me groggy, I'm fatigued, I don't feel good, I'm having mood swings, whatever, versus, oh no, I can't have hot Cheetos anymore.
Yeah. There's well, I guess the biggest thing I do that may be helpful is I'm a teacher first. I suppose that I don't heal the body does that. I don't go after symptoms, I go after root causes. And unless someone is willing to work at the root cause level, it's harder to help them heal. So in your example, we'll take your example of the Cheetos, right? Well, what do you value more? A short-lived, flash of flavor and borrowing from your future health bank account to pay for a savory moment right now? Or do you value longevity? Are you willing to do the work once you understand physiology and human nature, let's say, once you understand the first principles of health, and you can see essentially how you've been lied to. You can see how other people laugh all the way to the bank, making money at the expense of you and your health. And once that kind of clicks, that we're living in a system that you could argue, if we just stayed on the greed level, doesn't really care about you. And it's enjoying making money off of poisoning you. It sounds funny to say it that way, but that's essentially, if we can just be honest with it, that's what's happening. And once you see, we'll just stay in the food lane, the tens of thousands of unnatural chemicals put into food to addict you, to make it taste like something that it's not, to mask the denatured nature of whatever, like vegetable oils is a great one. They have to color them and deodorize them and flavor them in order to get them to even be palatable so that you would swallow it. If you got them at the end of the denaturing process, they'd be so rancid and off-putting you wouldn't eat it. But they then go and they deodorize and color and do all the things to make it taste like food again. And there's a whole set of chemicals we are not designed to live with. And you can't look at the statistics of where we used to be. So let's rewind to the mid-1930s. About 7.5% of the people had a chronic health condition. Today, it's 60% have at least one. So a lot of people have more than one. So you look at that, and then you look at obesity. You can go back and go to older hotels and you'll walk the halls and look at the photos, the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. No one's overweight in the photos. And you take the last few decades and try to imagine going to a beach without a bunch of people who are overweight. Something is fundamentally different. And if we want to get at the roots of what's different, we have to look for why it's different. And once we can see, oh, I'm being poisoned. And my Cheetos or my Gatorade or my Coke or my pick the thing, my fast food, might actually be part of the problem. What would it take to shift that? And since you can't change everything at once, where do you start and how? And it's really the work we do is trying to figure that out for people.
That's really important too, because I think a lot of people tend to, and this is also by design, tend to focus on the negative,
Hmm.
or focusing on what they can't have and how hard it's going to be, and they look at changing, their life as just a list of don'ts, a list
Hmm.
of a
Yeah,
list of can'ts.
sure.
So, what are some things that you do in your own life and with your clients to help them combat that and see it differently?
Yeah, first you're nailing it because there's mindset issues there. And so one of the things we talk about is there's a difference between a limiting belief and a poisonous one. There's a limiting belief is just like, who knew you could order fish at a steakhouse? Like there's some things you just don't know. And once oh, that's an option. Like I was limited in my assessment of a situation because I was thinking inside a particular box that was unreal. And then there's poisonous beliefs that really they they make excuses for us, or they have, more preciously, they have identity issues involved. There's, who am I to do this, or what, I'm not worth the effort, or who am I to try this? So there's inadequacy and unworthiness that get mixed into when we go to make change. Those sometimes taint or poison our efforts. But really, I'll zoom back out and say some of what we have to realize is we are in a system that intentionally uses fear. It intentionally uses painting the easy path for us, and easy and healthy often don't go together. But we've gotten so acclimated to paths that appear to be easy. I mean, Staples even made the easy button for us. Nobody particularly likes struggle. And so change can be that. And there's a justifiable reason why you look at that list of don'ts, as you put it, and think, oh my gosh, I have to change all of this. And it just feels like too much. So part of what we do is go after the education piece and the mindset piece. We teach people how this world is actually working, and who's hoodwinked you into eating and behaving a particular way, who's just only interested in treating your symptoms, never getting to the cause. And once you see that, it gives you intellectual, philosophical underpinnings to say, and look in the mirror and say, I may have to choose differently. And what would that mean if I had to spend more money on food? What would that mean if I didn't have this convenience and I had to, you probably have to learn to cook, or you'd have to, there are any number of things. It depends on the person. But essentially what we've gotten good at is helping with the mindset and philosophical underpinnings, and then getting very practical. Because as coaches, we're not doctors. We can't treat anything. All we can do is say, here's what burdens the body and here's what empowers it. And how do we pick the habits that are the most needle moving for you? And sometimes you got to get people drinking water. We have to get them pooping. If you're not pooping, you're becoming more and more toxic by the day. So there's so many ways into it. And there's a lot of eat this, not that, or find and replace. There's some simple things. And it's the quicker you can get somebody some wins where they go, man, I am genuinely feeling better. That does a lot for motivation. And the Cheetos lose their luster because, like, why would I eat that? It makes me feel like crap. But you don't know it because you get so accustomed or numbed out to it. So anyway, there's a lot I could say, but those are some of the high level ways we approach that.
I appreciate that, because it doesn't, like I said, it's all by design. And I think having people who are willing to challenge that, and also be able to provide real life, real time examples outside of even what you see on social media. Because, like you said, it's all macros and protein shakes and all of this stuff. And no, I don't really see people talking about water just as a basic, basic thing that you should be doing on a regular basis. Drinking water, going outside, learning how to breathe is really important. A lot of people, they only breathe in their chest. They don't know how to take a deep breath. Yeah. Simple things that you can do. And so that brings me to something that's been, I don't want to say it's a buzzword, but it's kind of a buzzword, and that's detoxing. A lot of people look at detoxing, and I've even been taught that detoxing is just not eating something for a certain amount of time. Or if I like to have a glass of wine, once or twice a night, maybe just not drinking wine for a month or two for whatever abstract reason. But that doesn't really sound right to me. And since this is something that you help people with, and something that you've spoken about before, I'd really like to get your perspective on what detoxing actually is.
Sure.
And how people can get started with that process in a healthier, safer way.
Sure. Great question. Because there's so much of what you're talking about, social media. It's like digital fast food, and it's just sound bites, and there's no comprehensive way to think about or approach the puzzle of, let's say, detox. And what we've realized is detox is a very different thing than healing. And so another way we've framed it is, instead of thinking of detox, think of it as purifying. So purifying the body of the things that poison it. So what you mentioned was more or less cutting off sources of toxicity that are barraging us on the day-to-day, the alcohol or the Cheetos or whatever other habits. Tap water. If you're drinking municipal water, you're probably poisoning yourself. So it's cutting off some of the inputs that are bringing in body burden, but we have to deal with what's already in there. And that's the purification element of getting things out of our body. So the way we've come to approach it, and we just stepped back and said, okay, what do we need to detox from? And the short answer to that question was anything that poisons the body. And so then we started creating a list of what things poison the body. And so and on the short list, you've got microbes that can be unbalanced. And the most egregious of the microbial world are parasites. Most people have no clue that that's part of the mix. And that is something the medical world or Western culture in specifically dismisses and tries to divert your attention away from. Almost every other country, they go through parasite cleanse pretty much every year, and they're baffled that we Americans think we don't need to cleanse ourselves of worms. There's some of that information is intentionally hidden from you. I can point you to books and even a CIA document that says, don't look at this. That we know that parasites and cancers look like each other. Just never mind that and move on. And so some of it's starting with getting the microbial colony rebalanced and getting the parasites or worms out of us. Because if you're infested with something that is a self-replicating toxin that lays eggs and continues to procreate and poop inside you and eat your first fruits of your food, we have a problem. We've got to get the microbes rebalanced and get out that source of toxicity. So there's the microbe level, and then there's the chemicals. Since the early 1900s, we've made about 80,000 new chemicals that are new to nature. Human body's never designed to interact with them. And some of the most egregious ones are the plastics and endocrine disruptors or cancer-causing agents that are just products of industry, products of hair products and skin products and household cleansers and plug-ins in our home or our car that make our house smell differently. There's so much of that we're surrounded by. And one of the easy ways to know if you're toxic is, are you overweight? If so, definitively you are toxic. Even then, you still would be. But being overweight, the way to understand that is that your body, if the exits are clogged and it can't get things out, then the body's only choice to make sure the blood doesn't become toxic and you die is to put the toxins and tuck them away in storage somewhere. So your fat tissues, your connective tissues, and your liver are typically where that goes. And it's the reason calories in, calories out doesn't work for most people. Sure, you can shrink your body weight, but you're going to go right back. The body won't let the stuff out of the cells if it perceives it can't get it to the exit and get it out of the body. It's too dangerous to let this out. Therefore, it's going to stay stuck in your tissue. You drop your calories really low and wonder why it's not working. Well, it's not because you're still toxic. And so part of what we have to do, we have to purify the body of those things safely over time, because if you go too fast, you're not going to enjoy how that feels. But starting to get the purification element down, and you can think of that like almost like termites. You've got this corrosive thing in your tissue eating away and wearing you out from the inside. And if you can clean that out, but then you still have wood that needs to be refurbished, right? You still have healing that needs to happen. And so knowing that purification is a different element than healing, and part of healing the body, it needs to nourish it. And we've expanded the definition of nourishment beyond food. It's wet water, it's good food, it's hope, it's sleep, it's movement. And you can even say connection with nature, light and sound. And it's nourishing the body with the things that foster healing, and recognizing that's a different process. It takes patience and it takes time, and an eye for what would it look like to make this a lifestyle. So those are kind of the two lanes of how we've come to think about it, and approaching it. Again, to your point, it can be overwhelming if you try to do too much. So one at a time, how do we purify the body and walk someone through a purification journey? And how do we walk them through a healing journey And depending on the person and their starting line, that there's differences in how we would approach that. But that's the high level short version of how we think about that.
That's great. And I think that there are definitely, well, at least I picked up on some really good things, some really simple tips, or even some things to start looking into, things that were, at least when I was coming up, they were like conspiracy theories, like the parasites.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about that growing up, and it's like, oh, you've got worms in your body, but it was like in the sense of like an alien invasion, like it's not really real, it's just a story that people make up to scare you. And now that I'm older, it's like, oh, that's a real thing.
Yes.
And I tell my kids about it and they're like, oh no, and so it's something to definitely look into further.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, another part of that, going back just a little bit to the previous question where we kind of touched on mindset. And so you talked about a few different ways that you can recognize if you have a toxic body or toxins in your body. What are some signs that someone may be holding on to some toxic beliefs or energy that could be stopping them from moving forward in their healing journey?
Yeah, I guess I'll come back to some of the things I mentioned in terms of the poisonous beliefs. And so I can say confidently, none of us gets through this life without some struggle. There is difficulty and suffering. We're all going to have episodes of that. The winds of opportunity and challenge blow on all of us. And from time to time, we will have challenge. And so some of it is developing the mindset that of resilience that I'm going to overcome instead of trying to avoid some of those uncomfortable feelings. Or those, it could be strained relationships, it could be a poor self-image, it could be just lack of belief that it's possible for you. And so when it clicks that I have to take ownership of this, and when you set out on a healing journey, really anything, you want to improve your relationships, your business, your finance, whatever. When you want to improve life, and you set out on a course to try to improve something, what you're going to find in that process is what you didn't know when you started. I wasn't aware that this would be part of the process. And if that can help build resilience, that when I hit a wall, when I have struggle, I'm not off course. I'm at the precipice. I've found the thing that I would need to learn to make the next climb, to get to the next plateau, and then figure out, okay, how do I climb from here? And that sturdiness of mind, that will that says I'm going to be resilient. And if I have you could frame it as a setback. If I run into a challenge, that doesn't mean I'm wandering and lost. It means I've found the next set of questions I need to entertain. And sometimes what we find when we do that is the unworthiness and inadequacy and lack of purpose. Those are, to me, that I've found to be the deepest, most disarming things that will knock someone off course and fight their will to get back up and keep trying. And so that sometimes takes having a coach, a counselor, somebody, a sounding board that can help you, that should hold up a mirror and say, this is what I'm seeing. It's not a judgmental frame. It's just, do you see how the way you continue to tell that story, the way you continue to frame who you are is going to keep you from progressing if you continue to believe that. So what would you have to believe to be true for you to be able to overcome that? And in the exploration of trying to answer that question, it gets more and more approachable. I'd have to believe that I was worth the effort. I'd have to believe that this is going somewhere. I'd have to believe that, who am I to not try? I'd have to believe that I'm trying to set an example for my family, or any number of things. And there's something admirable about resilience. There's no movie you watch where there's no struggle. The whole reason the movie hooks you is because there is struggle and it's relatable and there's stakes in the game. And you don't know if the hero can actually accomplish the mission. And so you're watching that play out. And our efforts to change our health really aren't that different. You're going to find roadblocks. So what do you do with them? And if you can recognize that your mindset's going to hold the key to your healing, and if it's eluded you, all that is you found evidence there's something you don't know yet, or there's a skill you haven't developed. But it's not a defect in human nature that you can't do it. It's just part of the process of learning. So yeah, mindset is maybe the biggest, that and just upstream trauma that we've had that poison us with a story and an identity. Sometimes that has to be cleared before the physical detox can be as powerful as it's possible.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, especially, the part about having, the sounding board, because Again, it's all by design that when we decide to do something to change our life, to do better, to be better, it's going to be a lonely journey.
Can be.
Yeah, it absolutely can be, but we know that it doesn't have to be, because their support can be found, and there are resources available, so that people don't feel alone, and so they're not isolated, when they start throughout this process. But let's just say, for the purposes of the listeners out there, or whoever may be watching this interview, I woke up this morning and I felt like crap, and I just wanted to feel better. And I felt like I needed to detox, declutter, but I didn't know where to start. What are maybe one or two things that I could do today as the first steps for me to start to detox my body and detox my life?
I mean, some of the biggest things would be just water. If you're not drinking good water, then we have a problem. Everything that is ever going to exit your body that you don't want in there exits via the medium of water. In the case of thoughts, it's replacing them with truthful and hopeful and life-giving stories. But when it comes to a simple habit, if you're drinking tap water, you're probably poisoning yourself. And that's just, it's an ugly, especially the bigger city you live in, the more that's true. And so a really good water filter would be a start. The more water can crowd out sugary drinks, the more water can crowd out stimulants, the more water can crowd out anything that is not, you would lose the argument if you tried to argue this is good for me. Water can help with that. And so part of what happens, even with a simple example like that, is like, but I've just lost a source of pleasure in a world that's already, in a life that's already hard, right? Don't take away my special drink. Come on. What about my wine? Like, okay, well, how badly do you want it? And so you start with water, and there's many other things I could mention. But that would be inventorying, picking one food ingredient to make sure that one never comes back into your mouth. Vegetable oils. If you just did that one thing, you start reading labels, and if it says corn oil, cottonseed oil, canola, grapeseed, rapeseed, soy oil, you could significantly boost your health if all you did was try to keep vegetable oils out of your life. That would be a great way to cut off inbound toxicity. And the other thing I'd say is inputs from the media. And when you recognize that media, there's such a dramatic effort to fight for your attention, and the more they can agitate you and irritate you and divide us, the more they can keep our attention. And so that whole system is meant to the more they put us in a fear state, the more we can't stop paying attention. So sometimes the biggest source of burden is the inputs of media. That's social media, mainstream media, a lot of the alternative media. There's some black pill people out there who claim to be telling it to you straight, and it's just toxic. And getting away from too much just fear and negativity, you just notice how your mood's better and the world feels kinder, and you notice birds and sunshine and flowers and things. Like, you can appreciate life again because you cut off toxicity.
That's awesome. That was funny. You were talking about the water, and not being able to have like the special drink. I'm thinking, how dare you take my sugar from me? But
Yeah, I nailed that one, did I?
yeah, you did.
Okay.
You really did. And so let's see, I guess because I'm really interested in the water, because I've been wanting to up my water intake.
Okay.
Is spring water tap water?
It can be. It depends. Like any water we drink it's the same water Jesus drank and Socrates drank, and it's recycled. It goes to the ocean, it humidifies in the clouds and comes back down. So it's the same water. The problem with it is that it's been recycled over and over, and we have created more and more chemicals that now are somewhere. And so if you're getting it straight from a spring, I hate to break it to you, there's hardly anywhere in the world that isn't full of stuff that you don't want. So one of the first steps is filtering your water, and you can dramatically reduce the influx of toxicity just with a good water filter. And surprise, it tastes a lot better. So that's, if nothing else, starting there would be a great first step. And then we can always nuance and make water wetter, I like to call it, and more nutritious for you. But yeah, first thing is just cut out the garbage in the water, and you might find your body's like, thank you. Oh, hydrated. I can finally poop again. I can finally sweat. My skin doesn't feel so parched. And on and on. There's no biological process you run that doesn't depend on water. And if the water between all your cells and inside your cells is like a dirty pool, you're swimming in your own toxicity. You can think of two fish tanks. One, you can, with dirty water and clean water, you can clean the tank, or you can medicate the fish. Like, let's get the water cleaned out. And my goodness, it's amazing how much better I feel. And I now I can find some, to your point, this point of this podcast, I can find some other source of pleasure somewhere, and not let water and shoving that out for a tasty moment be the thing that I seek for pleasure. There's so many other great ways to find joy and pleasure in this world besides sugary drinks. Sorry.
No, that's fine. You're fine. And you handled my segue for me, so thank you. You're an amazing guest.
Well, I tried.
Next question. And so on that note, what are some other ways that our listeners and viewers of the show can begin to incorporate joy and pleasure into their routine, into their new journey for, purification,
Sure.
like you said?
Yeah. Okay. Well, on the high level, I guess I like to define some terms. So I think of joy and happiness a little bit differently. Joy is this abiding sense of gratitude. It's an abiding sense of pleasure. It's an abiding sense of everything's gonna be okay. Like it's a set of lenses we wear that look for what's good and right in the world, and it just finds reasons to savor a moment. And happiness is more of a fleeting thing. It's a lottery ticket. It's a sports game. It's a new find in a shopping mall or whatever. It's just this. It's situational dependent. Whereas joy doesn't have to be. But for joy to be a constant companion, there's a mindset shift. There's a cultivation of principles and a way of looking at the world that is determined to see what's excellent and praiseworthy and holy, and to find reasons to appreciate this fleeting short life that we have, and take our eyes off of all the things that are foisted on us in the media that attempt to divide us, because those things are thieves of your joy. And if you're constantly marinating in that mediocrity, if you're constantly marinating in divisive things, guess what? You're not going to have a lot of joy. And joy is so pleasurable. It's so centering. It's so good for your health. And once you can find how to cut off the toxic inputs, media-wise, and you can open yourself up to things that bring joy. So that's going to be rich community. And that may be work to find it. But it's being around people who ooze the kind of joy and presence that you want to be about. Because if you're surrounded by toxic people, you're going to act like toxic people. You're going to become an average of who you hang out with. And you want to be around people who pull you up and edify you, and who read books that inspire you, and they have missions they're on, and they're trying to do something good in this world. And they're not doing it from an irritated, agitated, angry perspective, but they're actually trying to make a difference and love people as well as they can. When you find that type of community, it starts to expand into your day-to-day, you just become a joyful person. You become a peaceful, non-anxious presence that goes through life, and it's magnetic. The kind of people you want to attract are attracted to that. And you start to set the bar. And so to me, to find pleasure, it starts with who you are on the inside, and recognizing that there's a difference between joy and happiness. And you can chase happiness and money and fame and followers and all sorts of other stuff, and feel really, really empty and joyless at the end of it, because you're relying on external metrics to tell you when you're good enough and when you're supposed to be happy, and you're just chasing the next hit, which is a very hard way to live, because you're never going to find the fulfillment that you want. But joy comes from the inside.
Thank you for that. I know, and I just want to say, I know that there were some things said that people have looked at as like cliche or corny, but it's at the end of the day, it's true. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to subscribe to it, but you can just test it out for curiosity's sake. Yeah. If you are around people who have been doing the same thing the same way for as long as you've known them, see what happens when you do something different. See how they respond.
Yeah.
Are they welcoming? Are they happy for you? Are they encouraging you? You know, and if not, it may be time for you to evaluate your social circle.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're around jaded, cynical, pessimistic people all the time, you're going to end up like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know we've covered a lot in the time that we have been chit-chatting. But what is one thing that you hope the audience takes away from our conversation today?
Hopefully, it's just a level of inspiration that says, you know what? Maybe I've underestimated myself. Maybe I do have more potential or capability and ability to heal than I thought. If you are entertaining that thought that maybe I'm not a hopeless case, maybe my situation could change, then I think we've done our job. That is as much the point of why I even do these things, is just to pick up a microphone and try to inspire people that there is better. And if you don't like your address, you're not a tree. Move. Pick a different friend circle. Relocate. Get a different job. There are other things you can be doing. And if you take that away, then I think we had a successful time together.
I think so too. Okay, and so we are now getting into what I consider to be like the pleasure principle portion of the show.
Okay.
I have 2 questions that I ask every single guest, and even though I tell them the questions up front, they still have to think about how they're going to respond when we get to this part of the show. And so I'm going to jump right in with the first question, and that is, what does pleasure feel like to you?
I suppose it's as much contentment as it is anything else. It's just looking at, what I put my hand to and realizing work will always be there. There will always be another battle to fight. But did I do the best I could with the day I had? And did I stop and remind myself of the plot of this life? That is, at the end of the day, it's about other people. It's not just about me. It's about, there's no scenario of movie where I could play about a bright future and a success moment that doesn't have other people or my family in the picture. So it's always going to have that. And there's a contentment that says, hey, I'm balancing the aspects of life as well as I can. I'm not perfect and I don't know everything. And I haven't finished my to-do list because there's always more. But did I put in a good college try today? Did I overcome resistance and when I didn't feel like doing it? And if I can do that, I sleep peacefully almost every night because I can say that I did do the best I could with the day I had, and that there's a pleasurable contentment that exists in a headspace like that when you take off this onerous pressure to be all and do all, and especially if you're on social media, create this illusion of a perfect life. I'm like, I don't have to do that. It's so much more fun to just say, well, that was about as much as I could pack into a day, and I'll get to the rest of that tomorrow. And I do zoom out with frequency. Say, am I even doing the right things? And there's a contentment of, oh yeah, I signed up for hard. Okay, well, here it is. And let me go about doing that. And joy is I can say it with all humility is a frequent companion of mine, not because I'm somebody special, but I've just learned the principles and the realism that goes with achievement. And it's a peaceful way to live.
Beautiful. And so the next question, before I let you go about the rest of your day, what is your non-negotiable pleasure principle?
I guess I would say it comes back to a recognition that I think of rest and play as needs that humans have. They're not this nice to have. They're not some sort of, if you can afford it. Play and rest you're not weak for longing for them. They are a normal, healthy need. And what they need is a healthy outlet. And so I guess my pleasure principle would be to find the non-self-sabotaging regular rhythms of play that help me decompress from a day. And a mentor one time said, when you're playing, you're not wasting time, you're gathering strength. And that meant a lot to me because the play that I do, the genuine need to decompress. And if you fight that need, by the way, what you're going to end up doing is staying up way too late watching Netflix or scrolling on social media or drinking or any number of other things because you're fighting a need that you have. So you're not weak for needing to play. My questions became, well, how do I squeeze it into the most appropriate amount of time. What is the minimum effective dose of play? And there's a different answer for daily as there is weekly and quarterly or even annually. And having some sort of rhythm that gives me healthy downtime behaviors that check the box of play. And by play, I mean you get lost in an activity, you lose track of time, and you do it for the sheer joy it brings you, not because it's contributing anything to the so-called greater good. It's just fun. If you have a healthy dose of that, hopefully with some people that you enjoy, you will endlessly be able to shift between work and play, oscillate, surge and recover. And that principle really serves me well in life. So that would be what I would suggest for the listener.
Yay. Thank you so much for mentioning play. It's really important. It's so important. And like you said, you've got 6 kids. I have 3 of my own. Play is crucial.
Yes.
It's something that's so important, and it's so beautiful, and it's so freeing. And you learn so much through play and interacting with children. They have a lot to teach for them to be so new to the planet.
Yes, they do. And you can learn from anybody.
Absolutely. And so what are some ways that the audience can keep up with you if they want to get to know more about, what you teach and what it is that you do? If they're looking to work with you, how can they go about doing that?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking. So I have a blog and a podcast called Deconstructing Conventional. So if you want to hear me talk more about health-related topics, you can check out the podcast Deconstructing Conventional. But the main program that we run for helping people detox and heal is a company called Healing United. And that website is healingunited.today instead of .com. We wanted some urgency. Let's get on with it. Let's heal today. So healingunited.today, you can find our social links at the bottom, and you can check out our different programs. And if you're interested, we have a free 45-minute consultation just to talk about you and your health and if we can help you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for joining me today. I got some wonderful things from this conversation, and I'm sure that the audience did too. I look forward to hopefully talking to you again in the future. I've definitely subscribed to your podcast. It's an awesome show.
Oh, well, thank you.
So I appreciate your time today.
Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for inviting me on.
No problem. Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of the Power of Pleasure podcast. Make sure to check the website, powerofpleasurepodcast.substack.com. On the site, not only will you find some blog posts and other helpful tools to help you continue the mission, you'll also be able to access the show notes as well as any social links and resources from this week's guest. While you're at it, if you found this information valuable, which I'm sure you did in some way, go ahead and take a few moments to leave a rating or review wherever you're listening to this episode and share out on social. I hope to see you next week for another episode of the show. And in the meantime, in between time, go out and do one thing today to help you embrace pleasure as a lifestyle.